Okay, examples of present truth messages. So the idea of present truth is over time in the Bible, God has had prophets with very specific messages for a people at a specific period of time. Noah, of course, was told he had 120 years in the world to be floated. His message was get in the ark. Jonah had a very specific message for Nineveh. You got 40 days to repent or you're going to be destroyed. John the Baptist said that Jesus, the Messiah, was about to appear. Jesus said, at one point, he said, the time is at hand. In Mark, he said that. And he's referring to Daniel 7:25, the 70-week prophecy. Jesus also says of the scripture was fulfilled in their hearing. We see that in Luke, but he's referring to what he just read in Isaiah 61. So, um, somebody is
Carol, something about mute.
chatting.
Carol said something about mute.
Okay, just a second
I guess
here.
she has an echo.
She has an
I don't
echo.
have one.
Does anybody else?
No,
No.
I'm just saying that if everyone mutes while Randy's talking, then there's just a teeny tiny echo. It probably would go away if everyone mutes while Randy's talking.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you. So just a minute. I'm getting. Oh, okay. And so we also have what I would say the message for us today has been called the three angels message, and it's in Revelation 14. Linda's joining us. Okay. So I'm trying to advance. Come on. Here we go. So God's warning for today. In Revelation 13, he says, and he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So speaking is legislating laws when the power speaks, and when the power causes, they punish. So they use the powers of the state to impel. That's what that means, speak and cause. And he causeth all, both great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So that's, well, I'll refer to the no buy, no sell. Notice that he causeth all, small and great, rich and poor, free or bond. And all is all. Elon Musk is going to be forced. The presidents, the leaders of the world are going to be forced to receive that mark. In Revelation 14, it says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. And here's the consolation. Here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. So I believe the warning that's in blue applies to people who identify as Christians. If they take the mark of the beast, that seals them with the drinking the wrath of God and being destroyed. Okay, so we're going to go into now, who is the beast? What is his mark? How is he worshipped? And why should we care? it's really important to know who the beast is so that we can know what his mark is. And it's important to know how he's worshiped so we can respond to the mark. And God has given us all these prophecies separated by more than 500 years that tell us who the beast is. At our present time, most of the prophecies in Daniel and Revelation have already been fulfilled, and we already have a sure identification of the beast. And now we're going to learn which ones those are, how that works. Okay, here's the full three angels message. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him who made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. So the reference, I believe, the reference that says, worship him that made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters is a hyperlink back to the fourth commandment. That's why I have a reference there for Exodus 20. But that phrase is in the fourth commandment, and I believe that gives us a key at what the worship is about. But notice, um, those who fear God and give glory to him will worship him. Okay, the second angel's mentioned. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Now that's a hyperlink back to Isaiah and forward to Revelation 18. And the third angel's message, which we already read, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his designation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the image, the beast, and his image, and whosoever receiveth his mark. So the question is, at the end of time, who are we going to worship? Are we going to worship the Creator, or are we going to worship the beast? So I believe God wants us to understand prophecy. I'm not going to read all these verses, but they are taken from Daniel and Revelation and one verse from Mark. And it basically says, the angel says, I came to give you skill and understanding. And it says, but the wise will understand in the second one. And the third one down, when ye see the abomination spoken of by Daniel, this is Jesus speaking, let him that readeth understand. Jesus expected people to understand what Daniel was talking about. Blessed is he that readeth and hear these words and keep these things which are written. It's impossible to keep it if you don't understand it, if you don't know what's being said. Then here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. And behold quickly, blessed is he that keepeth the sayings of the prophecies of this book. So he's making it clear we are to understand this. So the old days where I thought, I can't understand it, it's too complicated. Besides, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be raptured anyway. I think that's a deception. I think the devil is actively deceiving the church to not see who the Antichrist is, who the beast is. And we're going to go through that. Okay. There's a movie scene where a guy has amnesia and he's walking through a city, and a fortune teller walks up to him and says, Want to know your future? And the guy says, Why? Can you tell me my past? Uh, we can have confidence in our interpretation of current and future events when we can definitively correlate the fulfilled prophecy with actual past historical events. And so that's the thing we are working on is let's understand what's going on. Um, and so uh, I've got comments. One of the questions is, so when you read all, does that refer to all humans or only those who are not God's saints? I believe when the scripture says all, It's referring to everybody.
Oh.
And that's the whole world. And that's why I say everybody's going to be pulled into this. It's not going to be, some people aren't. Everybody's going to get, all is everybody.
Mhm.
And so go back here. So we see the all a lot. And so it's important that we know that everyone is going to be forced with that choice. It doesn't matter. And when I've thought about it is like, uh, um, that means the Muslims, the Buddhists, everybody is going to be forced to make that choice. And everyone is eventually, except for those who choose to worship God, everyone's going to take that mark and they're all going to worship the beast by obeying him. I also had another comment. Bill, why don't you tell us what worship means? Can you?
Talking to you.
Yeah, take off the mute, Bill.
Okay, I think it is off.
Okay,
Yeah,
now we
it's
can hear
off.
you.
Okay. So yeah, I was looking that up because I'd heard this before, where it says worship there in the previous scripture in 14, Revelation 14.
Uh-huh.
The Greek word for worship is, see if I can do this right. Oh, it won't make any noise. Proskuneo, and it's a
Uh-huh.
verb. It means the first biblical usage. This is from the Blue Letter Bible. Says to kiss the hand in token of reverence.
Ooh.
So I think maybe we talked about this, that it means to submit or
Mhm.
bow the knee, kind of like what they did with um, the golden statue,
Mm-hmm.
um, with
With Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel too.
Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah. So, so I know a lot of people, when they read this, they think that people are going to be singing, singing the praises of the beast,
Uh-huh.
and doing some kind of worship like that. But the at least the Greek word implies that it's going to be submission. So
Yep.
Don't they kiss the Pope's hand?
they do kiss the Pope's ring, and in fact,
Mhm.
that is the first biblical usage here, is to kiss the hand or to
Wow.
kiss the ring. So I thought maybe you could talk about that if that's in your presentation
It
here. But
is not, but you know what? We're going to have time to talk about what the mark is, and we'll talk more about the beast, and I'll try to bring that up in one of the subsequent uh, uh, classes.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I know of one primary character who gets their ring kissed, and that's the Pope. But there are some Saudi princes who get that too. I think, didn't Obama bow to them or something?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Anybody else who has something to add, um, please feel free. Like I said, this is a cooperative, a lot like a midrash, um, even though I'm doing most of the talking. My computer is, oh,
Let
just
me
a
ask
second.
everybody. I think in the Vatican there's a statue of Peter, the first pope. That's what they refer to him as. Do they kiss his foot or his hand on that statue in the Vatican Square?
I don't know.
Kiss the toe?
I know in St. Peter's Basilica, there's a statue of Peter, which is actually a repurposed statue of Saturn. And they have kissed that toe so much, it is worn down to a nub.
Wow.
So there you go.
Marble must be tasty.
Mm.
Yeah, the Greeks, inherited the religion of the Romans inherited the religion of the Greeks. And
Mhm.
when Constantine came along, he just Christianized it. took the statue of Saturn or Zeus and called it Peter, and just named all those things. The Madonna, all those statues of Mary are all returning to Ishtar. So, you know, what if it works, I guess.
Jeez.
So, to understand this, so Daniel and Revelation are very closely linked, and they describe overlapping events and kingdoms, and they're both told in cycles. And so we're going to do a lot of reading to really emphasize that both of those books retell and expand, and they retell and expand. And so the story keeps being retold, but each time it'll add different details to pick up. And there's a prophetic chain, and we're gonna elucidate what that chain is. And the prophetic chain allows us to know where we are in the chain of historic events, even when the symbols representing the successive kingdoms change. And so that's key to understand this. Here's an overview of the largely prophetic books of Daniel. Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the metal man. Daniel's, the stone not cut by human hands that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the earth. Daniel 7, he dreams and has visions of beasts from the sea. It has 10 horns, a little horn, the ancient of days, and the Son of Man. Daniel 8's vision of the ram, the goat, and the little horn. Those are also describing the same events. God's judgment, God's kingdom established, the 2300-day prophecy. And then Daniel 7, we have the famous 70-week prophecy, which gives us the starting date for the 70-week prophecy and the 2300-day prophecy. Okay, let's go through when Daniel tells King Nebuchadnezzar what his dream was. We're not really covering it, but if you remember, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. He told all his magicians, "You guys tell me what it says." They say, "We can't do that. If you tell us what it says, we can tell you what it means." He goes, "No, no, I'm going to kill you all. You're fakes." And so Daniel hears about this. He goes to Nebuchadnezzar, and God gives him, they pray. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego pray, and God tells him what the vision is. And so starting in verse 31, so he's talking to Nebuchadnezzar. "Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay." You can see our little metal man here on the right. But what we're really seeing here is 5 kingdoms. One, the legs of iron is number 4, and then the kingdom of iron partly baked with clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. So that's God's judgment. He judged the idol. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. That's God's sentence. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. That's God's kingdom established. And so what we see is an outlay of the prophetic chain. And so we're going to go through it here, because the beauty is, since we do have history, we can see that Babylon existed between 606 and 539 BC. The Medo-Persians came in, if you remember the story, they snuck under the walls because they cut off the river, and they came in and they took over. They were the chest of arms of silver from 531 to 331. Greece then took over, started by Alexander, and then it broke up into 4 sub-kingdoms from 331 to 168. Rome, the legs of iron. So the pagan Rome existed from 168 to 476. And then the Rome was divided, the feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay, from 476 to today. And so the stone cut without hands destroys the metal man, God's judgment, and the stone becomes a mountain that fills the earth, God's kingdom on earth. Now, getting back to the stories that people tell about the end times, the Roman Church says that the legs and iron were pagan Rome. The Rome repeated was the formation of the barbarian kingdoms, which we'll discuss next. And then the stone cut without hands is the Catholic Church. That's the stone that destroyed pagan Rome, and the Catholic Church is growing to become a mountain that's going to fill the earth. In their eschatology, that's done. Jesus's kingdom is being rolled out with the Catholic Church. And so I would disagree with that. And so it's important to realize that Rome, in one form or another, extends to the end of time. Remember, the stone without hands destroys the feet and everything else in the Iron Man. So this is a busy chart. Let's work.
Randy, can I interrupt 1 second?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me okay?
I can.
So there was a tug and war between the caliphate, you know what I'm talking about, with the Muslim expansion through the
Yes.
Middle East, through Greece into Europe, and there was the Crusades were part of that battle between Western Europe and the Church, Catholic
Yes.
Church,
Uh-huh.
and that tug of war went on for, I don't know, hundreds of years. Maybe someone knows the dates on that, so that's not referenced, I don't think.
It's not referenced here. I would say it's referenced when it talks about the trumpets and the seals. One of those ages is discussing the Muslim hordes, where it comes from the pit. They're dressed like horses that have the heads of lions, stingers in their tails.
Hair like women. Mhm.
Yes, that's referring to that time in history. I'm not covering that part of Revelation.
But there's no, as far as a reemergence of that caliphate and it extending its reach into the Middle East, there's no
no
I don't know
reference
that
to
there's
that.
anything in Revelation about that.
No. It turns out that
Maybe in
that
Ezekiel.
is one of those events that is happening or has happened, but in the flow of the kingdoms that Daniel and Revelation lays out, that is not worth talking about.
Okay.
And so I know, and I'm not going to deal with the idea of the War of Armageddon and the different characters, Gog and Magog. That's not a part of these presentations. Those details are not critical to understanding who the beast is.
Okay.
And that's how it. But anybody else has
Randy?
questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you go back one slide to number 15? So a couple things that I think I understand, but I'm not sure. So Rome divided, iron, I guess we refer to that as steel, partly baked clay, which I perceive as concrete. How do you see that?
Oh yeah, that's just whatever they call, bake it when you're trying to make it strong, but they basically made an amalgam of clay and iron. And they don't stick together.
Another thing you talked about, the Roman Catholic Church. How
Yes.
many Catholic churches are there in today's world? Was there 11 total? and the Roman Catholic was just one of those 11? Does anybody know?
If are you referring to the Orthodox churches?
Yeah, I think that there's
Yeah.
total.
Yeah,
Like
so
the
there's other
Oriental or something.
Orthodox churches which are clearly close descendants of the Catholic Church.
Right. So the first one was the Roman Catholic Church. And then I heard you earlier in the slides talk about um, the Antichrist and where it resides and stuff. And I think I saw one of your slides where it says it referenced the seven hills. And I think that's what the Vatican sits on today, correct? Seven
Yes.
hills.
Yep. We are not going to talk a whole lot about the harlot that sits on the seven hills, the harlot that rides the beast. That's Revelation 17. Um, that's nearly we can get to that though. So we'll go down because the vision in Daniel 2 leaves a lot of details out. So it basically gets to the point of iron and partly baked clay and the toes, right? There's 10 toes. Now let's move on. So now I'm jumping ahead to give us the big picture. So in Daniel 2, we've got a head of gold, a chest of silver, thighs of brass, legs of iron, feet of iron and clay, and then all this is in the past, right? So I've got these lines that separate the past from the future. In the future, it's going to be struck with a rock not cut by hands, and then the mountain is going to grow to fill the whole earth. Daniel 7 is going to give us a series of beasts, a lion, a bear, a leopard with four heads, a beast, and a little horn. Notice that we're lining them up. The head of gold and the lion are representing the same kingdom, Babylon. The chest of silver and the bear. And then in chapter 8, it's going to talk about the ram with two horns. Those are representing Medio-Persia. Then we've got the thighs of brass, the leopard with the four heads. Daniel 7 talks about the big horn first, and then it gets broken off, and you get the four heads comes out of it. Then you get the goat with four horns in Daniel 8. And so this means so basically Lindsay is pointing out that the clay is baked to harden it, and the clay is a symbol of Adam's human nature, right? Yeah, that's a pretty deep insight. Hardened hearts against God's will, just like Pharaoh did. Um, and so there's all kinds of images that are useful to think about that way. Thanks, Lindsay. And then the legs of iron, and then the nondescript beast, which we're going to read about next, the little horn, all of that is uh, the beginning of pagan Rome. And then we get to the feet and clay, the little horn that uproots three kingdoms, and the little horn goes great in chapter 8. All of that happens during the 1260 years. Don't worry, we're going to get to that. And so this is the overview, so that when we go into Daniel chapter 7 and read that, I've already sort of given you a warning of what that's going to be talking about. Okay, Daniel chapter 7. And so I'm going to read this. It's important that we hear the text as it's written. One of the things that every time I've heard anybody talk about prophecy and Revelation and Daniel, they always are select verses. They're pointing something out. They're grabbing a verse from one place, grabbing a place from another place, and we're just going to go through it because I wanted to really show us how it circles back, it retells and it expands. So verse 2, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Four great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. We know from the book of, this is on the side. We know from the book of Revelation, it tells us the sea represents peoples, kingdoms, and lands. So these beasts are coming up out of the sea, meaning in a crowded area, right? There's a lot of war and turmoil because the sea is rough. The first was like a lion. It had the wings of an eagle. I watched it until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. The beast had 4 heads and was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. Remember, now it's not describing an animal, it's nondescript. It had large iron teeth, it crushed and devoured its victims, and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horn, so now Daniel has an aside, there before me was a little horn, a little one which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Notice, Doc pointed out that the horn didn't have ears. It is not interested in listening to God.
Right.
It speaks.
Mhm.
Okay, so it sees and it speaks, but it is not interested in listening.
Mhm.
Okay, now we have the judgment scene. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. That's God the Father, obviously. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like white wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were opened. So this is a judgment scene. This is the book of life, right? God is judging. This is the end of time. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. That big mouth was boasting. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. And so that's God's sentence. Okay. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days. Okay, so notice that he's not coming to earth. He's approaching the Ancient of Days. And so, just a second here. And he approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. So that's the equivalent of the stone, not cut with hands. And so it's important to realize that these beasts are only symbols of kingdoms, and they're not symbols of kings, they're symbols of kingdoms. So Babylon covered several hundred years, Medio-Persia, several hundred years, Greece, hundreds of years. Rome is going to cover almost 1,000, over 1,000 years. It's going to get divided. And so it's really important. These beasts that correlate to the metals in the metal man are talking about kingdoms and authorities. There's a whole lot to be said for those descriptions of Babylon, but we're not going to go into that now. That would be in a separate study where we look at the book of Daniel sort of by itself. Okay, we're going to keep on going. So Daniel was grieved. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Of course it did. Could you imagine having that kind of trip? I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. And he told me that he would make known the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall rise from the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And then Daniel goes, okay, I get the first three, but I want to know the truth of the fourth beast. Remember, the fourth beast was different. And it says, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, teeth of iron, nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped with residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were on his head, and of the other, the little horn, which came up, and before whom the three fell, even of that horn that had the eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. So basically, when the little horn came out, he's more impressive than the other horns that are there. I beheld, and the same made war with the saints and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So here's another retelling. We're going to hear a lot more detail about the fourth beast. We're going to hear that the fourth beast made war with the saints and prevailed against them. He killed them. This was the persecution of the Christian church. Then we see the Ancient of Days comes up, judgment is given, and then the saints possess the kingdom. This is a second retelling of the kingdoms, the judgment, the punishment, and then the kingdom being possessed by the saints. But then he goes again. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. So that's where he said that the beast is a kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and should devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of his kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another little horn shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. Just a second here. Yes, got a question. The fourth beast is a kingdom. The fourth kingdom is the beast, is the nondescript beast that has that chews with the iron. That is the kingdom of Rome. We're going to get into more detail about Rome. I'm also getting that pointing out that the metals diminish in value, right? It goes from gold to silver to brass to iron and clay. And that's it's letting us know that the kingdoms are getting poorer in value and that they're degrading. And so Babylon was glorious, but when you get to Rome, it's just iron, big teeth that crushes stuff. Okay, so let's get back to, and so the little horn shall arise after them, shall be diverse from the first, and shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, more bragging, and he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. More detail, right? That's the persecution. Now we got more detail. And think to change times and laws, and they shall be giving into his hand for a time and times and the dividing of time. So in the Hebrew here, when it says a time, that's a year. times is 2 years, and a dividing of time half. So we're looking at 3.5 years. But the judgment shall sit, this is God's judgment again, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it until the end, God's sentence. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him, God's kingdom established. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. So now we've got the first time prophecy. Now we've got 3.5 years, time, times, and a dividing of time. We've learned that the little horn is going to speak great words against the Most High. It's going to wear out the saints, and he's going to change times and laws. We'll get to that. But think about changing Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday and changing the festivals to the pagan holidays that are celebrated around the world today.
That's right. Sunday worship also.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the big change, right? The Sunday worship is basically throwing out God's law, right? He says the fourth commandment has now been changed to Sunday. Okay, this is going to be our sort of summary page for this week. But now we're going to get more detail about the four kingdoms in Daniel. You know, the Babylon, the head of gold, the winged lion, it was winged because it was fast. Medo-Persia, chest and arms of silver, it's the bear. Greece, the belly and thighs of bronze, a four-headed leopard. So Alexander the Great is the first horn, and then Greek is divided into four kingdoms. So we know the dates. Alexander the Great ruled from 331 to 323 BC. That's why these are getting smaller. And Greece was divided into four kingdoms between 323 and 168 BC. The Antigonids, the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, and the Attalids. Then the pagan Roman Empire came next with the legs of iron from 168 to 476. And Lindsay's pointing out that the World Health Organization is also going to introduce Climate Sundays, and we're gonna talk about that more when we talk about the Mark of the Beast. And so then so now we know exactly Alexander the Great was the Great Horn. Greece was divided into four kingdoms. We know what their names are. We know what dates they ruled. And then the pagan Roman Empire takes over, and then Constantine moves his throne, the throne of Caesar, to Byzantium. And in those days, that was called Constantinople, which is nice. I guess if you're the Roman emperor, you can name a city after yourself.
Mhm.
Let's see here. So, you know, it's pointed out again that while the little horn, the fourth power, can try to change the rules and the laws that it teaches its people, it can't literally change God's laws. It can't literally reach up into heaven and do anything to God. But it pretends that it can. It thinks that it can. Okay, here's the really important thing. The Western Roman Empire is divided into 10 barbarian tribes. So these are the feet and the toes of mixed iron and clay. Romulus Augustulus, the last Roman emperor, was deposed from the throne of the Western Empire by 476. The Western Empire is Rome. So the last emperor is deposed in 476. 10 tribes come up. They are the Alemanni, who become the Germans, the Burgundians, who become the Swiss, the Franks, who becomes the French, the Lombards, who become the Italians, the Saxons, who become the English, the Suevi, who become the Portuguese, and the Visigoths, which become Spain. The three the three horns of the 10 that get pulled down by the little horn are the Heruli. They are now extinct. The Vandals, they're now extinct, and the Ostrogoths, they're now extinct. These are these 10 kingdoms followed Alexander, and they followed the Roman Empire. And when they say that, Rome fell to the barbarians, these are the barbarians, these 10 tribes. We have dates for this. The little horn has the little horn who's sitting in Rome, he's telling the other tribes to destroy the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. So that even then, the papacy didn't have its own armies. It had other people do its dirty work for it. Then the little horn ascends to religious and civil power and reigns for 1260 years. The Emperor Justinian, who was in Constantinople in 538, names Vigilius, who was the bishop of Rome at that time, who was basically running Rome, says that all affairs touching the church shall be referred to the Pope. He's the head of all bishops and the true and effective corrector of heretics. We actually have a date that the papacy starts. That's a big thing. Then in 1798, Napoleon removes Pope Pius VI and has him taken captive to France, where he dies a year later. So for those 1260 years, the known world was run by the Pope and administered by his cardinals in the different royal houses. And so, these three tribes that were lost have only recently been rediscovered by archaeologists. Thank you, Lindsay. That, it's easy for people to say, well, there's these seven, but archaeologists discovered evidence that there were the other three tribes, so that we know for sure that the feet of clay and iron were the 10 barbarian tribes that took over, and that the Pope took over, destroyed three of them, and then the other seven are alive today. That's the seven countries of Europe. Let's see here. We are close to the end. Oh, there's a picture. So here's where the tribes lived. And so you can see the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths are the ones that got wiped out. And these others are the countries of Europe. And they grew up from barbarian tribes, and they established their kingdoms, and they exist till today. So the little horn uprooted these three, and the seven barbarian tribes, here are the names and the countries that they are now. So I think we are okay. Let's stop here. Let's see, what are we doing? It's only 10 after 8. Yeah, we started late. Let's go a couple more slides, because I think we've got a nice stopping point coming up here. Yeah. So the fourth beast becomes the little horn. So 10 horns arise. A little horn arises among the 10. After the 10, the little horn uproots 3 of the 10. You can see these are the verses that these are retold in. The little horn grows great, and the little horn rules for a time, times, and half a time, 1260 years. Why is this important? Because we're establishing that the little horn in this book is the Roman Catholic Church. He's going to be called the beast in Revelation. Of course, the word Antichrist doesn't appear in Revelation, so we're talking about the beast. And so the characteristics of the little horn are, he starts little, smaller than the others. He rises among the ten in the midst of the ten. He's more stout than his fellows. He's diverse from the first. He uproots three. He speaks blasphemies. He persecutes God's faithful people, called the saints. He thinks it can change the law of God, and we'll get into that. And he shall rule for time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years. And his power will last until it is destroyed just before God sets up his kingdom. Okay, some people think of uh, Antiochus or Antiochus Epiphanes as the little horn. He's referred to that way in the Maccabees, and it's really common to try to describe him as the little horn. But there's a lot of reasons why he's not the little horn. So, A, Antiochus does not arise after the ten, in the midst of the ten. Antiochus arises before Rome. Remember, he comes out of Alexander and then comes out of the Seleucids, and he is hundreds of years before the time when the little horn is mentioned. Antiochus is not more stout than his fellows. He's battling his other people, and he has rulers over him. Antiochus does not uproot three kingdoms. He does not think to change the law of God. He does not rule for a time, times, and half a time. And he does not last until just before God sets up his kingdom. And it's not logical that the same book, only one chapter later, uses the same name for two different kingdoms. And so that sort of goes to the idea that Antiochus is the little horn. Okay, let's go to the 1260-day prophecy. This is the most frequently mentioned time prophecy in the Bible, and it happens in a lot of different ways. Daniel 7:25, time, times, dividing of time. Daniel 12, a time, times, and a half. Revelation has 40 and 2 months, 1,203 score days. Another time, 1,203 score days. Another time, a time, times, and half a time, 40 and 2 months. This is how we know that the time, times, and half a times, 3.5 years, 42 months are actually 1,203 score days. That's 1,260. So this, if we had any doubt about how long these time periods were, Revelation solves it for us. So what do those mean? The Jews commonly used a lunar year of 360 days, made up of 12 months of 30 days. So that 42 months times 30 days equals 1,260 days. 3.5 years, 42 months, and 1,260 days are the same time period. And the concept that a day equals one literal year is found in Ezekiel and found in Numbers, so that the 1,260 days is actually 1,260 years. And those years spanned from AD 538 to 1798. I think it is absolutely amazing and stunning that we have these details in the scriptures which line up with history. I mean, when I began to understand this and I heard people talk about it and I read about it, I thought to myself, wow, this is really clear. And that's where we are now. So now we go back to this picture, which sort of summarizes the periods. We have the past going up to 1798, where Napoleon deposes the Pope, and then the future. Okay, that's a lot. We're going to stop here